It was a warm July evening in Washington, D.C., when the devastating news broke. Passers-by at a quiet cemetery had stumbled upon a haunting sight. A man collapsed at the foot of a child's grave, his lifeless body resting beneath the name etched in stone. That man was Donald Curtis, better known by his stage name Big Boss Dono, a local rapper, muralist, and community figure whose energy once lit up the streets of Southeast D.C. The whispers spread quickly. Dono is gone. And not just anywhere. He was found at the grave of his young son, Razik, who had died only a year earlier after a brave battle with cancer. It was a story almost too heavy to believe. A father, broken beyond repair by grief, choosing to spend his last moments in the very place that symbolized both love and loss. Police reports confirmed what friends feared. Dono had taken his own life. His final words, posted online just hours before, echoed like a cry for help no one had been able to answer. "I'm so sorry, y'all, but I can't take this no more. Razik, I really tried." The tragedy shook the entire DMV area. But to understand how it came to this, why a man admired for his music, his art, and his mentorship could no longer carry on, you have to rewind. You have to go back to the beginning. To the story of a boy from Southeast D.C. who grew into an artist, a father, and a man whose heart ultimately could not survive the weight of unimaginable loss. Donald Curtis, known to friends as Curty Top, was born and raised in the beating heart of Southeast D.C. The neighborhood was not easy. It came with crime, poverty, and constant reminders that life here could be brutally short. Yet even in this environment, Donald found ways to create beauty where others only saw struggle. In his teens, he began painting murals, transforming the city's bare walls into bright explosions of color and meaning. His work wasn't just decoration, it was storytelling. Each mural carried pieces of the community's pain and resilience, giving voice to the voiceless. His art made him a fixture in D.C.'s cultural landscape, a kind of guardian of the city's untold stories. But Donald had another gift: music. Under the name Big Boss Dono, he started to make waves in the rap scene around 2015. His style was gritty and raw, but it resonated deeply because it was real. He didn't pretend to be someone else. His lyrics carried the weight of his upbringing, the chaos of the streets, and the hope that he could rise above it all. Tracks like Lego Me became anthems for those who felt overlooked. Dono wasn't chasing mainstream approval, he was speaking directly to his community. He became known not just as an artist, but as a man who stayed true to his roots. Of course, the path wasn't without controversy. At one point, Dono was caught in a very public altercation at Stadium nightclub with the rap group Migos. The incident made headlines locally, reinforcing his reputation as someone who lived unapologetically in his truth, for better or worse. But no matter the setbacks, he pushed forward. Still, while music and murals gave him recognition, it was something else entirely that gave his life purpose. That something, or rather, someone, was his son, Razik. Dono often told the story of how he found out he was a father. He recalled the moment his girlfriend Sierra sent him a picture of the boy. At first, he couldn't believe it, but then he saw it, the uncanny resemblance, the eyes that mirrored his own. "When I took the test," he later recounted, "not even before the test popped. When she rolled that back window down, he was sitting right there. And he looked at me with a look in his eyes like, I was waiting on you. That was the moment his life changed. Donald hadn't planned on fatherhood, but Razik's presence anchored him. Suddenly, the dangers and temptations of street life didn't matter as much. He said openly that being with his son saved him from bullets, from police run-ins, from mistakes that could have cost him his freedom or even his life. I didn't even know what I was doing, he admitted once. I just was doing it. He changed my life in so many ways. From then on, Razik wasn't just his child, he was his lifeline. By 2021, Dono's career was steady, his art respected, and his family life strong. But then came the news no parent ever wants to hear. Razik, at just 3 years old, was diagnosed with cancer. The blow was devastating. Donald and Sierra immediately threw themselves into the battle, spending long days and nights in hospitals, documenting Razik's journey, and rallying support from friends and family. Online, Dono showed a side of himself few had ever seen before. Vulnerable, fearful, and deeply human. He tried to stay strong, but cracks began to show. In November 2023, he posted an emotional letter to his son, admitting that he cried in private, that he sometimes questioned God, and that he didn't know how much longer he could keep up the appearance of strength. This isn't the end, he wrote, but we're heading toward it. And you are stronger than me. His words carried the unmistakable weight of a man being slowly broken by the reality he could not change. And then, in January 2024, the battle ended. Despite the best efforts of doctors and the constant love of his parents, Razik's fight with cancer came to a close. Dono was shattered. Friends recalled the silence in his home, the way he withdrew from conversations, and the hollow look in his eyes. He tried to pour himself into art and music, but the absence of his son was too loud, too permanent. His once bright energy dimmed, and though he still showed up for his community, those closest to him could see the cracks widening. The man who had turned walls into canvases and pain into music was now struggling to survive his own grief. His murals still stood, his music still played, but inside, he carried a wound that refused to heal. Dono's friends often described him as someone who could light up a room, someone who gave hope to young artists and rappers coming up in DC. But privately, he admitted that without his son, life felt directionless. And as the months rolled on, the weight of grief grew heavier. Dono's silence became louder. His once vibrant smile gave way to moments of withdrawal. His community saw him, but they did not see through him, not into the depths of a father's breaking heart. And then came the 21st of July 2025. On that day, Donald Curtis Big Boss Dono posted one final message online. It was a confession, a goodbye, and a cry of exhaustion all at once. Hours later, his body was discovered at his son's grave. The city mourned. But for those who knew him best, the signs had been there all along. This wasn't just the story of a rapper. It was the story of a father whose love was so deep that the loss of it became unbearable. And the question that lingers now is chilling. How many others are silently carrying grief this heavy, unseen, until it's too late? For most people, grief begins with loss. But for Donald Curtis, grief started long before his son took his final breath. From the day little Razik was diagnosed with cancer, Dono's world tilted on its axis. What began as hospital visits and cautious optimism soon spiraled into endless days of treatment, nights filled with restless prayers, and a constant battle to stay hopeful in the face of despair. He tried to put on a brave face, sharing updates with friends and followers online. But the truth was written in his eyes. Each round of chemotherapy, each night Razik cried from pain, chipped away at him. He was a father desperate to protect his son from something he couldn't fight with his fists or his music. "Life I used to live was so crazy," he once confessed. "But when I met you, you changed me." Those words were more than a memory. They were an anchor, a reminder that without his son, he might never have survived his own dangerous past. And now, as Razik's small body fought against a relentless disease, Dano felt powerless in a way he had never known. The community rallied around him. Friends sent prayers. Local artists painted murals of Razik with angel wings. Messages poured in on Instagram every time Dano posted updates. But even with all the support, the burden he carried was crushing. In November 2023, just 2 months before Razik's passing, Dano shared one of his most emotional posts. Writing directly to his son, he admitted to crying in private while smiling in public. He admitted to questioning God. And he admitted, painfully, that sometimes he felt weaker than the very child he was trying to protect. "This isn't the end," he wrote, "but we're heading toward it. And you are stronger than me." Those words haunted those who read them later. At the time, people praised his vulnerability, admired his honesty, but hidden between the lines was a father preparing for the unthinkable, trying to brace himself for a loss no parent should ever face. On the 9th of January 2024, the unthinkable arrived. Despite the relentless fight, the prayers, the hope, and the countless hospital visits, Razik lost his battle with cancer. He was only 4 years old. For Dano, the moment was shattering. He had fought every step of the journey alongside his son, only to reach the end of a road that offered no second chance. Friends later said he looked hollow in the days following Razik's death. The spark in his eyes, the same spark that once filled his music, his murals, and his mentorship, was gone. He tried to keep moving forward. He attended community events, showed up for other artists, and even smiled for photos. But those closest to him knew it was all a mask. Behind closed doors, the silence in his home was unbearable. The absence of Razik's laughter, the emptiness of his room, the toys left untouched. These were the daily reminders that his world had been turned upside down. It wasn't just the loss of a child, one friend said later. It was the loss of Dano's purpose. Razik gave him a reason to stay alive. Without him, he didn't know who he was anymore. The months that followed were marked by quiet struggle. Dano's grief was like a shadow that followed him everywhere. He poured himself into art and music, hoping to find some kind of release. But no mural, no verse, no rhythm could numb the ache in his chest. Even when surrounded by people, he often seemed distant, his mind far away. Friends described him as a man breaking in silence. He wasn't the type to openly ask for help. Instead, he shouldered his grief alone, letting only glimpses of his pain slip through in late-night social media posts or brief conversations with those closest to him. Sierra, Razik's mother, tried to support him while navigating her own heartbreak. But grief has a way of isolating. Even between partners who share the same loss, Dano's way of coping was to retreat into himself. And with each passing month, that isolation grew deeper. By mid-2024, nearly 6 months after Razik's passing, rumors began to circulate about Dano's mental state. Some said he wasn't sleeping. Others whispered about his drinking. A few worried aloud that he wasn't safe. Still, he kept showing up. To the community, he remained Big Boss Dono, the muralist who painted hope on the walls of DC, the rapper who gave voice to the streets, the mentor who pushed young artists to chase their dreams. But inside, he was carrying a grief that seemed to grow heavier with time, not lighter. His friends later admitted they wished they had pushed harder, checked on him more, forced him to talk about the pain he kept locked inside. But hindsight is cruel. At the time, no one could have known how close Dono was to breaking completely. By early 2025, 1 year after Razik's death, Dono's struggle was undeniable. His posts online became darker, more confessional. He spoke about trying to stay strong, but his words dripped with exhaustion. Then, on the 21st of July 2025, he left a message that would send chills through everyone who read it. "I'm so sorry, y'all, but I can't take this no more. I really hope to see y'all again. Razik, I really tried. Mom, I tried. Dad, I tried. My sisters and brothers, I tried." It read like a farewell letter, but no one expected how final it would be. Hours later, Dono was discovered at the very place he had spent countless afternoons grieving the grave of his son. This time, he wasn't there to mourn. He was there to leave. For Washington, D.C., the loss was more than just another headline. It was the end of a story that began with promise, love, and transformation, and ended in a silence that still echoes today. Big Boss Dono was gone, but the real question, the one that still haunts his family, friends, and community is this: could anyone have saved him before it was too late? Donald Curtis wasn't just a rapper. He was a heartbeat of Washington, D.C.'s Southeast community, a man whose presence could command both respect and admiration. To some, he was Big Boss Dono, the local rapper whose tracks had become the soundtrack of their lives. To others, he was Curdy Top, the muralist who painted hope on concrete walls. To all who knew him personally, he was a father, a mentor, and a friend who gave everything he had, until grief eventually consumed him. The murals he left behind were more than art. They were symbols of perseverance, resilience, and identity. Walls that were once gray and lifeless were transformed into vibrant tributes to the struggles and triumphs of his community. Each stroke of paint carried his personal story, the challenges of growing up in a tough neighborhood, the joys he found in fatherhood, and the pride he felt in giving voice to those who often went unheard. But even amidst these public accomplishments, Dono's private life was a storm of pain. The death of Razik had left him hollow. Friends recall seeing him wandering the streets of D.C., lost in thought, headphones blasting his own music as if trying to drown out the silence left by his son's absence. He would stop in front of murals he had painted, his fingers tracing the outlines as if seeking comfort in the colors he once loved. Music had always been Dono's outlet, a way to process his life and express his truth. Tracks like Lego Me weren't just songs, they were autobiographies set to beats, stories of struggle, resilience, and pride. His lyrics carried authenticity, raw and unfiltered, resonating deeply with fans who understood what it meant to fight for your place in the world. Yet, for all his outward confidence, the grief he carried began to seep into his music in ways that worried those closest to him. Lines became darker, rhythms more somber, and his once vibrant energy and performances began to fade. Dono had always been a mentor, offering guidance and hope to young artists trying to navigate the often treacherous path of the music industry. Now, even as he guided others, he struggled to find direction for himself. "I remember talking to him after one of his shows," said a former mentee. "He smiled, he laughed, he encouraged us, but I could see it in his eyes. He was hurting, really hurting." The duality of Dono's life, his public role as a community leader and his private battle with grief, was perhaps most evident in his online presence. Social media had been a tool to share joy, successes, and moments with Razik, but it also became a window into the despair he could no longer contain. Late-night posts showed vulnerability rarely seen in someone so revered. He spoke openly about the struggle to stay strong, the moments when he felt he couldn't go on, and the unending pain of losing a child. For a man who had built his life on appearances of strength, these admissions were raw, almost unbearable in their honesty. One post, shared months after Razik's death, captured the quiet desperation he felt. "I really tried, Mom. I tried. Dad, I tried. Sisters, brothers, I tried. I can't take this no more." Those words, typed on a glowing screen, were a silent plea, a warning sign that went unheeded, a father's sorrow made public yet still invisible to those who could have intervened. Despite the darkness, Dono continued to be a mentor. He spent hours with young artists, teaching them not just about music and painting, but about perseverance, self-expression, and the importance of staying true to one's roots. He believed that creativity could save lives, that art could be a lifeline, in the same way his son had once been a lifeline for him. Dono wasn't just a teacher, one mentee recalled. He saved us from ourselves sometimes. He made us believe we could do more than survive, we could thrive. It was this generosity, this willingness to uplift others even while he struggled internally, that made his eventual downfall all the more tragic. A man who had given so much to his community, who had inspired countless others to follow their dreams, was fighting a battle he could not win alone. By mid-2025, the weight of grief, compounded by his public responsibilities and private pain, began to take its toll in visible ways. Dono became withdrawn in person, often skipping community events or showing up late. Even when he performed, the energy that once defined him was noticeably absent. Close friends tried to reach out, but he would brush off their concerns with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The city watched quietly, unsure of the depth of his suffering. And yet, his murals continued to stand as silent witnesses to his brilliance and his pain, colorful testaments to a man who had lived fully, loved deeply, and ultimately suffered in silence. Then came the 21st of July 2025. That morning, Dono posted one final message online. It was short, heavy with the exhaustion of a man who had given everything he had and found himself empty. "I'm so sorry, y'all, but I can't take this no more. I really hope to see y'all again. Razik, I really tried." Hours later, Dono was discovered at his son's gravesite. In one final act, he returned to the place where love and grief had intertwined most profoundly. The city mourned, the murals stood silent, and the community was left grappling with a heartbreak that felt impossible to understand. In the days that followed, vigils were held, tribute walls were created, and stories poured in from people whose lives he had touched. Friends spoke of his mentorship, fans shared how his music had inspired them, and fellow artists highlighted the beauty of the murals that dotted the city. But amid the tributes, the question remained: how could a man so surrounded by love, by support, by art, and community be left to carry such pain alone? Dono's story became a catalyst for conversations about grief, mental health, and the invisible battles that many face. Organizations and community members began discussing how to better support those dealing with loss, particularly parents who had lost children and men struggling to express vulnerability in public spaces. In life, Donald Curtis had been a creator of hope. In death, he became a reminder that hope is fragile, and that grief, if left unchecked, can be all-consuming. As the city remembered Big Boss Dono, one truth became clear. His legacy wasn't just his music, his murals, or even his mentorship. It was the conversations he sparked about vulnerability, about community support, and about the silent struggles that so many endure behind closed doors. His story, though marked by tragedy, left a lasting impact. Each mural, each song, and each life he touched carried a message. It is okay to not be okay. It is okay to grieve. And it is our responsibility to support one another before grief becomes too heavy to bear. After Razik's death, Donald Curtis's life became a delicate balancing act. On the outside, he was still Big Boss Dono, the artist, mentor, and public figure who inspired countless people in Washington, D.C. But behind closed doors, he was a father grappling with an emptiness that no success, no mural, and no song could fill. Sierra, Razik's mother, and Dono's partner, became both his anchor and witness. She had been by his side through every hospital visit, every sleepless night, and every moment of hope and despair during their son's illness. Together, they had navigated a nightmare no parent should ever face. But now, with Razik gone, the shared grief that had once brought them together began to reveal cracks neither could ignore. "Donald was still my partner," Sierra later said, "but he was hurting in ways I couldn't fix. He loved me. He loved our family, but there was a part of him that was lost. That part belonged to Razik, and no one could reach it." In public, Dono remained involved. He continued to paint murals, record music, and mentor young artists. But those closest to him noticed changes. Simple things like showing up late to a studio session, leaving a mural unfinished, or skipping a community event became patterns. He tried to keep Sierra in the loop about his feelings, but even he struggled to articulate the depth of his pain. Conversations would start, then stall. Tears would well up, and then he would push them back down, saying he didn't want to burden anyone else. The weight of his grief was something he carried alone. Friends recall that evenings were the hardest for him. After a long day of creating art or recording, he would retreat to his home, wandering through Razik's room, staring at the toys, the small clothes, and the drawings his son had left behind. These objects, once symbols of joy, had become mirrors reflecting the void in his life. The social media updates he shared during this period reveal the struggle between wanting to show strength and being consumed by vulnerability. Dono would post pictures of murals he had completed, captions filled with inspiration, or videos of studio sessions, but alongside those, there were moments of raw honesty. One post from mid-2025 stood out. "I try to stay strong for everyone. I try to keep giving, keep creating, but some days, the weight is too heavy. Some days, I feel like I'm drowning, and no one can see it." Fans reacted with concern, flooding the comments with messages of support. But in truth, no one could fully see the private battles Dono was facing. No one could reach the part of him that had been shattered by loss. Sierra struggled too. She tried to help Dono, reminding him of the community he had built, of the lives he had touched, and of the future they could still create together. She encouraged him to lean on friends, to speak with a counselor, or to find solace in music and art. But grief has a way of isolating even the strongest bonds. Donald's struggle was compounded by guilt. He felt he had promised Razik he would always be there, that he would guide him, protect him, and show him the world. Now, that promise felt broken, as though the foundation of his life had crumbled beneath him. "I didn't fail him in life," he told friends quietly, "but I feel like I failed him in death. I should have done more, been stronger." The 21st of July, 2025, started like any other day or so it seemed. Dono posted a brief, haunting message on Instagram, one that captured the unbearable weight he had been carrying for over a year. "I'm so sorry, y'all, but I can't take this no more. I really hope to see y'all again. Razik, I really tried. Mom, I tried. Dad, I tried. My sisters and brothers, I tried." The post was simple, yet every word screamed exhaustion, despair, and heartbreak. It was a confession of a man who had given everything to life, only to feel it had taken everything back. Hours later, Dono returned to the grave where Razik had been laid to rest. There, in the place that had been both his sanctuary and the epicenter of his sorrow, he made his final, irreversible choice. The community's reaction was immediate and profound. Friends, family, and fans flooded social media with grief, confusion, and shock. Vigils were organized. Murals became tribute walls. Local artists painted messages of love and remembrance on walls Dono had himself once decorated. Sierra shared a statement that revealed both her heartbreak and her attempt to find closure. "Curtis, this is not okay. I'm hurting so bad. Please, God, forgive him. It wasn't intentional. It was a mistake without thought. Lord, he just wanted his son. God, please forgive his soul. Please allow him to reunite." The words were raw, unfiltered, and painfully human. They captured the anguish of someone left behind, struggling to reconcile love and grief, memory and reality. The tragedy of Dono's life and death has prompted the community to reflect on grief, mental health, and the importance of emotional support. Conversations that once might have been avoided are now taking place in neighborhoods, schools, and online forums. Local organizations have increased their outreach to parents and young men who may be silently suffering. Dono's story serves as a stark reminder that no level of success, influence, or talent can shield a person from the devastation of loss. Even those who appear strongest on the outside may be quietly battling storms no one can see. As the city continues to mourn Big Boss Dono, the lessons of his life are becoming clearer. His murals and music remain symbols of creativity, resilience, and hope. But his death underscores a critical truth. Grief left unspoken can become unbearable. Emotional pain requires acknowledgement, support, and understanding. In the days following his passing, friends and family vowed to continue Dono's legacy not only through art and music, but through the conversations he inspired about vulnerability, fatherhood, and the invisible weight of loss. The story of Donald Curtis, Big Boss Dono, is a story of love and devotion, brilliance and despair, creativity and heartbreak. It's the story of a father who gave his son everything, and in losing him, lost himself. The news of Donald Curtis's death spread like wildfire through Washington, D.C. and the surrounding areas. Big Boss Dono, once the vibrant heartbeat of Southeast D.C., was gone. And not just gone, his passing was a tragedy layered upon tragedy, occurring at the very place that had come to symbolize both his love and his grief. The gravesite of his son, Razik. For many, it was incomprehensible. How could a man so full of life, creativity, and community spirit be lost so completely? How could someone who had given so much to others be left to carry such unbearable pain alone? Within hours, friends, family, fans, and local artists began to gather. At Razik's grave, candles were lit, flowers laid carefully on the soil, and handwritten notes whispered messages of love, grief, and solidarity. The quiet hum of mourning filled the air, punctuated by the occasional sob or whispered memory. People came not just to grieve Dono, but to honor the father he had been, the mentor he had been, and the man who had inspired so many to pursue their dreams. Vigils were organized across the city. Community centers, art galleries, and local schools hosted memorials. People shared stories of how Dono had touched their lives, how his music had motivated them, how his murals had inspired them, and how his guidance had changed the trajectory of their paths. One young artist spoke at a vigil, his voice trembling with emotion. "Dono believed in me when no one else did. He told me to keep painting, keep writing, keep believing. I wouldn't be here without him." Tribute walls began to appear in neighborhoods where Dono had painted murals. Fans left spray-painted messages, handwritten letters, and photos of Razik and Dono together. Every corner seemed to reflect the duality of their loss: the son and the father, the life and the legacy, the joy and the heartbreak. Social media became another space for collective mourning. Thousands shared photos, videos, and memories of Dono. His tracks resurfaced on streaming platforms, not just as music, but as eulogies to a life abruptly ended. Fans revisited lyrics with new understanding, recognizing the depth of pain hidden beneath the beats and rhymes. Even in death, Dono's influence was palpable. Conversations about grief, mental health, and emotional vulnerability that might have been taboo were now front and center. People began speaking openly about the struggles they faced, inspired by the honesty Dono had shown in his final months. Mental health organizations seized the moment to emphasize the importance of support, particularly for fathers, young men, and artists navigating grief. Workshops and outreach programs were organized in schools and community centers, focusing on emotional literacy, coping mechanisms, and the importance of seeking help. Dono's story, tragic as it was, became a catalyst for change. One counselor, reflecting on Dono's death, said, "Too often, we see men trying to carry grief alone. Dono's story is heartbreaking, but it's also a wake-up call. We need to provide safe spaces for people to express pain before it becomes unbearable." Sierra, Razik's mother, continued to share her grief publicly, navigating a delicate balance between honoring her son and mourning the man who had loved him so fiercely. She spoke of forgiveness, of understanding, and of hope that Dono and Razik were now together in peace. "Lord, please forgive his soul," she wrote on Instagram. "Please allow him to reunite with Razik." Her words resonated with thousands, sparking a movement of reflection and empathy. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, compassion and understanding can help heal fractured communities. Dono's murals, once symbols of creativity and hope, took on new significance. Each piece became a memorial, a lasting tribute to both his talent and his humanity. Street corners and walls throughout Southeast D.C. turned into living memorials. Residents began organizing cleanups and art projects to honor his memory, ensuring that his influence would continue to shape the city for years to come. Local radio stations played his music repeatedly, not just as entertainment, but as a collective remembrance. Friends and colleagues recounted stories of late-night studio sessions, the mentorship he provided, and the tireless effort he had put into helping others succeed. These stories emphasized that while Dono's life ended in tragedy, his contributions had left an indelible mark. The tragedy also prompted conversations about fatherhood and vulnerability. Dono had been an example of a man fully embracing his role as a parent, yet struggling privately with the emotional consequences of loss. Community leaders began advocating for support systems specifically designed for grieving parents, highlighting the need for mental health resources in communities where stigma often prevents open dialogue. Through vigils, murals, and social media campaigns, DC began to see the emergence of a cultural shift. People were no longer silently suffering, they were talking, sharing, and reaching out. Dono's death, as painful as it was, became a catalyst for communal healing and awareness. Even 1 year later, the city still feels the void left by Big Boss Dono. His story remains a powerful reminder of the fragility of life, the weight of grief, and the importance of connection. Schools teach lessons about resilience, using his murals as examples. Community centers host workshops, inspired by his mentorship. Music programs honor him by encouraging young artists to channel their struggles creatively. And through it all, one truth stands clear. Dono's legacy is not just in the art he created, the music he performed, or the lives he touched. It is in the conversations he started about vulnerability, grief, and the necessity of human connection. He may be gone, but the lessons of his life and the cautionary truths of his death will continue to resonate, shaping a city that still remembers, mourns, and heals. Donald Curtis, known to many as Big Boss Dono, may have left this world too soon, but his life continues to resonate in ways that ripple far beyond Washington, D.C. His story is one of extraordinary creativity, profound love, and heartbreaking loss, a reminder that even those who seem strongest can carry battles invisible to the outside world. In the weeks, months, and now years following his death, the city has come together to honor his memory. Vigils, murals, music tributes, and social media campaigns continue to celebrate not just the talent Dono shared, but the humanity he embodied. Friends, mentees, and fans alike have recounted stories of his generosity, patience, and mentorship, painting a picture of a man who gave fully of himself, even as he carried a private storm of grief. His murals remain perhaps the most visible testament to his life. Throughout Southeast D.C., walls that once were blank or gray now bear the vibrancy of his vision. Each piece tells a story. Struggles overcome, hope restored, dreams realized. Children who grew up around his art describe how it shaped their perception of their own potential, how it taught them that even in hardship, beauty and meaning can emerge. For many, these murals are more than art, they are lifelines. They symbolize resilience, the possibility of renewal, and the power of expression. And in each line and color, Dono's presence endures. His music, too, has become a kind of living eulogy. Tracks like Lego, Me, and others that once echoed the streets now carry the weight of a community's grief and memory. Fans listen and reflect, not only on the beats and rhymes, but on the man behind the microphone, the father, the mentor, the friend who gave everything he had. You feel the heart in his lyrics, a local fan said. He wasn't just telling stories about the streets. He was telling his story, his pain, his love, his everything. That's what makes it so real and so heartbreaking. But perhaps the most important part of Dono's legacy is the dialogue he inspired about grief, mental health, and emotional vulnerability. His passing forced a city, and perhaps even the broader hip-hop community, to confront uncomfortable truths. That grief does not discriminate by age, success, or strength. That men, too, can struggle in silence. That loss can fracture lives in ways no one sees until it's too late. Workshops, support groups, and initiatives have emerged in the wake of Dono's death. Parents who have lost children find spaces to share, to cry, to grieve openly. Artists and young men are encouraged to speak about emotional pain before it becomes unbearable. And while no one can undo the tragedy, these efforts are a testament to the lessons his life and death left behind. Sierra, Razik's mother, has become a quiet advocate for mental health and grief awareness. She honors both Razik and Dono through her words and actions, reminding those who struggle that support is not a sign of weakness. Through her, the family continues to convey the importance of compassion, forgiveness, and understanding even in moments of unthinkable pain. Donald loved fiercely, she once said. He gave so much to everyone around him. We just have to make sure his love, his lessons, and his struggles help others before they suffer the same fate. For the community, the ripple effect of Dono's story has been profound. Conversations that were once hushed or ignored are now front and center. Teachers, mentors, parents, and peers speak openly about emotional pain, the pressures of life, and the necessity of support systems. And in every mural painted, every tribute song recorded, and every vigil held, the lessons of his life continue to resonate. Vulnerability is strength. Grief is human, and no one should walk through darkness alone. Donald Curtis's life was a complex tapestry of beauty and tragedy. He experienced love as a father, joy as an artist, and connection as a mentor. And he experienced the deepest grief any human can endure, the loss of a child. His story is both heartbreaking and instructive, a reminder that even those who inspire us most are not immune to the struggles of life. In reflecting on his legacy, one truth becomes clear: we are responsible for one another. We must notice the signs, listen to the unspoken cries for help, and create communities that do not let grief go unanswered. Dono's story teaches that art, music, and mentorship matter, but so do empathy, care, and human connection. Today, as fans walk past his murals, stream his music, or tell stories of the man who once inspired them, they are reminded that while life can be cruel, love, creativity, and compassion endure. Dono's spirit lives on not only in the walls he painted or the tracks he recorded, but in the hearts of those who continue to carry his lessons forward. He taught a city, and the world beyond, that even in the darkest moments, we can find meaning through expression, through connection, and through the courage to reach out to one another. And perhaps most importantly, he left behind a plea that will echo for years. It is okay to not be okay, and we must always check on those who may be silently struggling. In remembering Big Boss Dono, we remember a life that touched so many in profound ways. A father who loved beyond measure, an artist who painted hope on bare walls, a mentor who shaped futures, and a man whose vulnerability reminds us all to be present for one another. Though his passing was tragic, his legacy is enduring, a call to compassion, understanding, and the enduring power of human connection. Rest in peace, Big Boss Dono. Your murals, your music, your mentorship, and your heart will never be forgotten.